Greetings. I am Dr. Arshiya Sethi. On behalf of Cree Foundation, I thank Lucknow Bioscope and Sanat Kara for allowing me to share my COVID creations, dance poems of double authorship, based on poetry written by me during the COVID times and danced by leading dancers. I am normally associated with dance, and so finding me in a poetry segment may come as a surprise to some people. But then this poetry that I'm going to talk to you about is what I call danced poems. Before I talk to you about the danced poems, let me tell you a little bit about myself and my rather checkered writing career. As many other people, when young, I would dabble in poetry. But it was poetry of a different kind. There was no consistency. It was happy poetry, it was sad poetry, it was a lot of love poetry, and it was a very strange situation of poetry that was in the form of conversations with God. I remember one of those poems, and I will recite that for you. It's a really old poem. I'd probably peg it at about at least 45 years old. It said, अफशां का चिलमन धुंधलाता है मेरा नज़ारा, क्या मलमल का पर्दा काफ़ी ना था कि कुदरत को भी बीच बुला लिया. You can see that this is written in a sort of simple Hindustani. I was not very adept at that time in any language, neither Hindi nor English nor Urdu, Punjabi, Sanskrit. These are the languages that I knew, and I could not write with any strength in any one of them, just simple words. I remember this particular poem I loved because of the brevity. In its shortness, it said a lot, and that it was inspired by another poem that I had just read. And it's in English. A baby rabbit with eyes full of pus is the work of scientific us. This was a short poem written by Spike Milligan, the Irish comedian, actor and poet, who incidentally was born in India. Now, along with time, I forgot all this writing business. My writing took the form of academic writing, student writing, and then I started writing on the arts as dance critic for the Times of India, and later as a dance scholar, I started writing more robust and critical articles. Poetry had gone out of my mind completely. But then, all of a sudden, something happened that had never happened before. COVID. It was a pandemic of such enormous proportions. It frightened all of us. It operated silently. We didn't know where the enemy was. There was confusion. What would fight it? We had the highest authorities in the world experimenting with the strangest things, but nobody was coming out with a secure vaccine. The numbers were increasing, the fright was growing, we were all put under lockdown, the uncertainty of it all, the inability to go out, the anxiety, when would this be over? The anxiety, when will we meet our loved ones? Because you know, in this globalized world, you have people in your family in different continents. How do you meet them? How long will this tribulation last? Amidst all this, two things happened. One was that as we realized that the real warriors of COVID were going to be the doctors, we noticed, and the medical fraternity, we noticed a very peculiar thing happening in India. There were attacks on the doctors, on the medical frontline workers. There were even attacks on the police, which was needed to control the situation. I don't think anywhere else in the world such a thing was happening. I was shocked, bewildered, and somewhat ashamed. Shame is a very powerful motivator for me, and I found myself writing a poem about saluting the frontline COVID health workers. I wrote this poem in English, as I've often said that I think and dream in English. And I gave this poem to Cree Foundation, which is my foundation, its co-trustee, co-founder trustee, Rama Vaidyanathan, one of the finest dancers in India. Vande Chikitsak, Vande Sehatkari, Vande Vande Corona Shamshirdhari. This unknown enemy, infinitesimal, invisible, a small tiny virus with results pretty lethal, infectious, contagious, rapidly transferable, terrifying humanity with its capacity communicable. With every breath man cowers, fearing its impact, wondering if. Who cares? Who helps? Who will act? They will, those dedicated to health and inclusivity, warriors with medical qualifications, masks and gloves. Doctors, nurses, paramedics, hospital and ambulance staff working tirelessly with patients, monitoring the graph. Intensive care units, isolation wards, it's daily, 24/7, to get the curve to flatten and hopefully even. For weeks they have stayed in their cars to be on call, denied comfort, sleep, shut-eye, or even a stretch at all. Eating, dressing, shaving hastily, all on the run, deprived of any let-up, family embraces, softness or fun. At risk themselves, overworked, exhausted, they labor to save as the ones who give wings to your prayers. They need to be brave. Attacks, violence, bricks and bats, being pelted by stones large enough to kill, grievously hurt or break their bones. Is this what they deserve? These selfless saviors of life, modern day charakas, sushrutas, must be saved the strife. We have clapped, sung, drummed and rung the bell. Let us mean the honor and stop the senseless hell. Become the nation that expresses true gratitude for their superhuman grit, determination and fortitude.
When Dr. Arshiya Sethi sent me this poem, I got goosebumps and I couldn't wait to translate it into movement and imagery. It was total lockdown those days, and therefore I had to collaborate with the people in the house. My daughter Sannidhi, who played the tambourine, and my student Vaishnavi, who recorded the video. What happened was that all the collaborators, including the medium, that is the iPad, became active participants in the video, sending their message across in different ways. The message to be sensitive. I thought it was a fantastic opportunity to use art as a medium to address the issues around us.
The piece written for the COVID warriors as a salutation was a piece that needed to go far and wide. So I had a word with a very dear friend of mine, and that is Sharadi Saikia. I asked her whether she would be interested in translating the poem into Assamese and dancing it. Little did I realize at that time that she is a really fantastic translator, because she doesn't do word to word only, she does spirit to spirit. That is a special kind of translation. So Sharadi did the translation into Assamese, and then did the choreography. Using her immense knowledge about the music, the talas, and the arts of Assam, she was able to create this piece, which I'd like you to see. But before you see it, I just want to tell you that we looked at some of these pieces as public interest messaging, and nothing proves it more than the fact that this production of Sharadi's actually was telecast on Prague TV, and it happened at exactly the same time as the numbers started escalating in Assam. Communication and transformation are the two basic purposes of the arts.
শত্ৰু শত্ৰু শত্ৰু
শত্ৰু শত্ৰু শত্ৰু
অসীন অদৃশ্য অপাৰ
অসীন অদৃশ্য অপার
বীজাণু এধানমান
বাহক মারাত্মক
ক্ষমতা অপরিমাণ
ত্ৰাসিত কৰে মানৱক
ত্ৰাসিত কৰে মানৱক ত্ৰাসিত কৰে মানৱক
প্ৰতি উশাহত ভয় প্ৰতি নিশাহত ভয়
প্ৰতি উশাহত ভয় প্ৰতি নিশাহত ভয়
যদিহে 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 মোৰো হয় যদিহে মোৰো হয়
যদিহে মোৰো হয় যদিহে মোৰো হয় যদিহে মোৰো হয়
কোনে চাব কোনে ৰক্ষা কৰিব
কোনে দিব এটুপি পানী পিয়াহৰ
ৰবা ৰবা হে দেশবাসী শুনা মানৱ সেৱাৰ সেই বৃহৎ পৰিয়ালটোৰ কথা মুখত ঢাকনি বন্ধা হাতত মোজা পিন্ধা জীৱনৰক্ষী সেই সেনানীৰ কথা শুনি লোৱা
হোৱা চোৱা ডাক্তৰ হোৱা নাৰ্ছ হোৱা স্বাস্থ্যকৰ্মী এম্বুলেন্স ষ্টাফ 24 ঘণ্টাৰ সেৱাত ICU আছে কোৱাৰেণ্টাইন আৰু আইচলেশ্যন ৱাৰ্ড সমুখ সমৰৰ সৈনিক ইসব নাহিবলে কৰোণাৰ ত্ৰাস
নাহিবলে কৰোণাৰ ত্ৰাস নাহিবলে কৰোণাৰ ত্ৰাস
Meanwhile, we went in for the second phase of the lockdown, and people were getting agitated. I couldn't believe it. Here we were facing the worst enemy we had ever experienced, because we couldn't see this enemy. And people were getting worried about a lockdown. What is so negative about a lockdown? It's not a lockup. And that was the theme of the second poem that I wrote. When I wrote this poem, I wondered who would be the dancer I would give this poem to. And impulsively, I rang up a senior Kathak dancer based in Pune, Shama Bhate. And I asked her, Shamaji, would you like to hear a poem that I've written about COVID. She heard it. I said, would you like to dance it? And she said yes in a second. And she, within, I think it was 4 days, produced the most amazing production based on my poem. And I realized that these were poems of double authorship, that I who wrote the poetry only did half the work. The other work was done by the dancer. And so I call my COVID poems not just my COVID poems, but my poems of double authorship.
This is a lockdown, not a lockup.
Never before have so many people been locked down across the world, all at a time. Locked down, not locked up. This is far more than just rhyme. Lockdown is responsibility, lock up a crime. This is a lockdown, not a lockup.
Ta, hey, ta, hey, hey, ta, hey, 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 ta, hey, ta, hey, hey, ta, hey.
Do wear masks homemade. Stay indoors. Drink warm water. Wash your hands, not once, but more. Keep your environs clean, all surfaces and the floor.
True, there's no definite cure for corona as yet. But a breakthrough will soon come, you bet.
Even now, with the health workers ardor, we lose less than 1% of the affected, no more.
This
Is a lockdown, not a lockup. There is life even beyond corona. Stay together, fight as one. Don't despair. It's a war against corona, and win it we will. Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, in thoughts, feelings, and iron will. Shubham Bhavatu, Kalyanamastu. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti.
By now, it was almost 50 days of the lockdown. And people were getting more desperate, more concerned. There is a social nature of man. So these 50 days were very, very difficult. And I found myself writing my third poem. This was my first poem in Hindi. I did not sit down consciously to write in Hindi. But I knew there was a sailab within me. A sailab is this outpouring of emotions. And when I sat down with the paper, the hand moved and I looked down. The script was Hindi. I was writing in Hindi. I gave this poem to well-known Odissi dancer Kavita Dwivedi. I waited eagerly to see what she would do with the poem. Now, it's important to understand that I never interfere with the artistic work that a choreographer or a dancer does. So I had no idea how she was going to treat this poem. And when I saw how she had used it intelligently to focus on what is her strength, her real strength is her abhinay, particularly her netra abhinay. And so, Wo 50 Din was done with almost a torchlight on her face.
वो 50 दिन भयपूर्ण, भूखपूर्ण, भ्रमपूर्ण थे वो 50 दिन, मानव जीवन शैली के अनोखे प्रतिबिंब। ऐसा समय था वो जो हमने कभी न देखा, पर उस समय ने हमें कई पराचल पर परखा। रोकथाम, अलगाव, अकेलेपन के वो 50 दिन। रखा हमें घरेलू काम झाम और पकवान में बिन, योग, वर्जिश, आयुर्वेद, कल्याण, प्राणायाम, एक से दूसरा और दूसरे से तीसरा का रहा दिनचर्या का आयाम। रामायण, महाभारत, दूरदर्शन वापसी के वो 50 दिन स्मरणीय रहेंगे याद कई कारणों से, वजह और तर्क विभिन्न। प्रकृति के सौंदर्यकरण से उतनी जितनी विश्व की त्राही से, निराशा की चित्रों से, संक्रमण के आंकड़ों से और यम की परछाई से। हताश, विषण, विषादपूर्ण वो 50 दिन दे गए अमूल्य सीख। जीत की कुंजी है साथ रहने में अभिन्न। जिंदगी और मौत से जूझते विश्व के महान देश हार गए शक्तिशाली, विजयी रहे वो जो स्वीकार करें ये आदेश। न भेद, न भाव, न अवैज्ञानिक प्रस्ताव, न टीका, न गोली, न कीटनाशक का सुझाव। बचा पाएगा कोरोना महामारी से, रखो याद सफलता का रहस्य एकमात्र इंसानियत और मानवतावाद।
It was my pleasure and honor also to be performing on the poems written by Dr. Arshiya Sethi. And what a touching poem it was, such an emotional and intense. And at that time when Dr. Arshiya Sethi ji approached me, can you do this? And when I heard the poem, it was something very close to my heart. And at that time we all were going through the same phase. But recording was not that easy. And that too, having such situation around you, you don't feel like putting on the lights and camera. And so my heart just popped and said, let's do it in a natural way. And you know what I did? I just had the sunlight with me, and behind me was Lord Jagannath, and he played the lights for me. He was giving the directions, and the outcome, you all know how it was.
By now, a buzz had begun being created around my poems, and I had a lot of friends, dancers, getting in touch with me, asking me to send them something that they would dance. Amongst the many calls that I got a call from Ileana Chittaristi. Ileana has been my friend for many, many, many years. So she rings me up and says, I want you to write something for me. And I said, but I don't write on commission. I write what I feel. She says, no, I don't want to dance to any COVID thing. I'm fed up of COVID. which really was the sthai bhav of all of us. We were all fed up of COVID. She asked me to write something on Jagannath. I said, I don't write on Jagannath. I have no ideas coming on Jagannath. I don't write poems like this on order. And she says, well, I have to tell you something about Jagannath. And then she told me the most amazing story about the Lord. She told me that just before the Rath Yatra, the Lord takes a bath. It's the day of the Shnan. And then falls sick. And he goes into quarantine himself with all the Daityapatis looking after him with their gamchas worn as masks. I was quite intrigued by this image. I found it quite funny as well. And I promised that I will write something. Nothing was coming to mind. I get another phone call from her. She says, it's Shnan day. If you don't write anything fast, when will I compose the dance? When will we do the recording? I want to offer it at the feet of the Lord during the Rath Yatra. I have always felt a special calling from Lord Jagannath. So I was actually a little surprised. Why am I not being able to write anything? I think we were waiting for the right stimulus. And the right stimulus comes not from Puri or the Lord's land of Odisha. It comes from Kerala. You may remember there was the story of the Kerala elephant. That is what was in my head. And if anything was going to come out, I thought it was going to be something like this. And just then, because Ileana was talking to me on the phone, and she was really angry, so her voice was very loud, I found myself with the other phone in my hand, and I Googled Shnana. And do you know, the first image that popped up from my phone was that of Lord Jagannath as he emerges from the Shnan in Gajavesha. I felt the God had said something so important, that he is one with those in pain, so we should not fear that we are alone. Jagannath speaks to me. In these hard times, I have realized, I say, Jagannath speaks to me in many a way. A week ago, the world heard a story of the Kerala pachyderm that was gory. Brutality, deception faced the elephant. Cruel as she was 3 months pregnant. On social media, she trended. Celebrity support was extended. Submerged in water with shattered jaw, her pain everyone felt and saw. None could help her, and she was gone. Till God surprisingly claimed her as his own. On Shnana Purnima, before devotees did retire, he emerged from his bath in elephant attire. I am all creatures and by you stand, he seemed to say to her of distant land. In this gear, Gajavesham, I am the Lord Ganesha, here to remove your troubles and dvesha. In these hard times, I have realized, I say, Jagannath speaks to me in many a way. Truly, in these hard times, I have realized, I say, Jagannath speaks to me in many a way. Jagannath speaks to me in many a way. Jagannath speaks to me in many a way. During the period of COVID, there were some trends, as it were, on all the groups, arts groups. One of the trend was the desperation at the loss of livelihoods. Yet, what we were noticing is that there was a feast of performative art being offered on our computers, on our phones, on our handheld devices, on iPads. Even at the time of such severe deprivation, fortunate are those who live their lives in lay, sur and tal. उम्मीद उदासी का विरोधाभासी सफर, घूमती मंडराती है जिंदगी की डगर, उम्मीद उदासी का विरोधाभासी सफर, मोड़ चौराहे चाराली पर खड़े सोचते हैं सब, दुविधा है कौन से पथ पर चलें हम सब, कब कांटा आए न जाने कोई, परंतु हर पड़ाव में अवसर की ज्योत सोनी, अवसर की ज्योत सोनी, अवसर की ज्योत सोनी, अवसर की ज्योत सोनी। घूमती मंडराती है जिंदगी की डगर, उम्मीद उदासी का विरोधाभासी सफर, स्वरमाला के 7 सुरों में ना कोई लड़ाई, सुर ताल नृत्य मानो हो बहन भाई, नाट्य बांधे राखी तो भाव रस पकड़े कलाई, देश में ऐसी सद्भावना की करें हम दुहाई, करें हम दुहाई, करें हम दुहाई, करें हम दुहाई।
दागितिटदा दागितिटकड़िदातिटदा कड़िदातिट गेगितिटदा गेगितिटकता गदिगिनदा गेगितिटकता गदिगिनदा गेगितिटकता गदिगिनदा दागितिटदा दागितिटकड़िदातिटदा कड़िदातिट गेगितिटदा गेगितिटकता गदिगिनदा गेगितिटकता गदिगिनदा गेगितिटकता गदिगिनदा दागितिटदा दागितिटकड़िदातिटदा कड़िदातिट गेगितिटदा गेगितिटकता गदिगिनदा गेगितिटकता गदिगिनदा गेगितिटकता गदिगिनदा।
A few days later, Jyoti Srivastav presented the same piece. घूमती मंडराती है जिंदगी की डगर, उम्मीद उदासी का विरोधाभासी सफर, कलाकार बिरादरी सौभाग्य पात्र स्वीकारे बधाई, काल्पनिक लोकों से परे स्वर्ण मंच की कामना ललचाई, लेकिन इन पिछले महीनों में वास्तविक नींव की याद दिलाई, तन मन धन और कला लक्ष्य है केवल मानव भलाई, मानव भलाई, मानव भलाई, मानव भलाई। घूमती मंडराती है जिंदगी की डगर, उम्मीद उदासी का विरोधाभासी सफर, सृजनात्मक कौशल्य बनाए पुल, जलाए दीप, पथ पर फैलाए गुल, प्रेम रस से भर दे हर दरार, आंसू पोछे लाए करार, लाए करार, लाए करार, लाए करार। एकजुट हो जीतेंगे अदृश्य अप्रत्याशित वार, एक साथ करे विरोध हर चोट का, हर प्रहार, एकमात्र कवच इस संक्रमण का है भाईचार, भूल जाओ उदासी इस उम्मीद से हों हम उदार, हों हम उदार, हम उदार हों, हम उदार, घूमती मंडराती है जिंदगी की डगर, उम्मीद उदासी के विरोधाभासी सफर।
That was a time when we all were in a big shock and totally lost. No doubt we were practicing, we were dancing, but still somewhere we lost our hopes. But the moment I got your poem, मुझे सच्ची में उम्मीद मिली. ये उम्मीद एक ऐसी उम्मीद थी जिसने ये सोचने पर मजबूर कर दिया कि इसको उस आयाम तक ले जाया जाए जिससे हम ज़्यादा से ज़्यादा लोगों तक पहुँचें और लोग इस कविता के जरिए हम कलाकारों की मनस्थिति को समझ सकें. यही वजह थी कि पहले मैंने इस कविता पर सांगीतिक दृष्टि से कार्य किया. पहले तो बहुत से म्यूजिशियंस ने मना कर दिया कि ये पॉसिबल नहीं है क्योंकि इसका छंद वैसा नहीं है जिसमें म्यूज़िक बन सके. लेकिन जब बहुत ज़्यादा उस पर डिटेल किया गया और सरोज भाई के साथ मैंने बहुत समय लिया उनसे बातचीत करने में, तो हम लोग एक नतीजे पे पहुँचे और पहले हमने सिर्फ फ्लूट पर काम किया और फिर धीरे धीरे ये सफ़र पूरा होता चला गया और उम्मीद हमारी उम्मीद की तरह उभर के सामने आ गई. जब म्यूज़िक बन जाता है तो फिर किसी भी नृत्यांगना के लिए डांस करना कोई बड़ी बात नहीं है. और हम लोगों ने कोशिश की, मैंने गुरुजी से भी डिस्कस किया, मेरे गुरु दुर्गाचरण रणबीर जी से, कि मैं इसको करना चाहती हूँ और इसमें मैं उड़ीसी को एज इट इज़ रखना चाहती हूँ, मैं उसको बदलना नहीं चाहती. क्योंकि जब हम उम्मीद की म्यूज़िक पर काम कर रहे थे तो कई जगह ऐसा लग रहा था कि शायद कथक का मूवमेंट ज़्यादा सुंदर लगेगा. लेकिन थोड़ा ध्यान देने के बाद हमें उड़ीसी के भी बहुत सारे ऐसे मूवमेंट मिले जो उसके साथ फिट होते थे और फिर मैंने ये कोरियोग्राफी कंप्लीट की. और ये उम्मीद मुझे इतनी अच्छी लगी कि मुझे हर बार डांस करने में जो मज़ा आता है वो बखान करना बहुत मुश्किल है. और मुझे बहुत स्ट्रांगली ये बिलीव है कि ये उम्मीद को मैं जल्दी ही, जैसे ही मुझे कोई एक अच्छा चांस मिलता है ग्रुप वर्क प्रेजेंट करने का, तो मैं अपने सीनियर मोस्ट डांसर्स जो 20 साल से भी ज़्यादा मेरे साथ नृत्य कर रहे हैं उनके साथ मैं इसको ग्रुप वर्क की तरह दुनिया तक पहुंचा सकूं. पर प्रेजेंट मैं सोलो कर रही हूँ. अपने रेpertoire का एक बहुत अहम प्रेजेंटेशन मैंने इसको बनाया है. लास्ट प्रेजेंटेशन हमने निमराना में किया और इट वाज हाईली अप्रिशिएटेड बाय ऑल द ऑडियंस एंड इवन बाय द चेयरमैन ऑफ निमराना होटल्स.
I wonder that if the artist could be so giving, could the artist not set an example for all of us? I decided to use the imagery of the artist as the giver, urging other people to give as well, because it is in the giving that we find our truest happiness. And the second experiment I tried was of seeing whether community can be created through very loose bonds. Let me give you an example of what I mean by community being created by loose bonds. Guwahati has been the site for the Pragjyoti International Dance Festival, which next year I think goes into its 12th year. So basically for 10 years before, there had already been dancers who had danced on this platform. These were mostly young dancers. So I wondered whether idealistic young dancers can use this festival platform as enough of glue to hold them together, because there were international artists who had shown interest as well as Indian artists. I chose to write this poem in English. It really is the English sequel to Umeed Udasi Ka Virodhabasi Safar. It's titled, Which Fork Do We Take? Poetry written in the time of Corona. This one is for Anvesa and the Pragjyoti International Dance Festival dancers. A collaboration with Cree Foundation. Which fork we take? Life is a journey on a twisted road, which we walk, carrying both hope and load. Which fork we take decides what is in store. Which is the road that is traveled more? Where it bifurcates, no one will know. But every turn gives a chance to grow. When caught unaware, we have a choice of freezing, fleeing, or fighting, finding a voice. As recognized artists, unique is our capacity. Repositories we are of unbridled creativity. The decision we make is of the possibility. Do we use our skills for self or for humanity? Lockdown, quarantine, and physical distancing has shown the world we knew to be receding. Aware of our good fortune, privilege, and gifts, we need our talent to create a world without rifts. The arts alone can build a bridge, calm the mind, ease the hurt, light a lamp, make hope surge. So we must do it ourselves. And to you we urge to do for another daily, unfailingly, something kind. Something kind. Something kind. Sharing these poems written during the COVID period is a very precious opportunity for me. I thank Lucknow Bioscope and Sanat Kada for giving me this opportunity. I thank the dancers who enthusiastically picked up my poems and danced them so beautifully, creating thereby poems of double authorship.